I never thought the day would come when I would expose my own daughter's darkest secret at her quinceañera, right in front of everyone she loved. But to understand how I got there, we need to go back to when I was 18, caught up in a life I thought I could never escape. I was deep into the Latin Kings by then, running the streets since I was 13. Violence, drugs, and crime were my everyday reality. My parents were long gone, and the only person who cared about me was my grandma, who still dragged me to church every Sunday. It was there that I first met Marisol. Marisol was everything I was not. She was the kind of girl who made you feel like you had a chance to be better, to be someone worth something. I remember sitting in that pew, bored out of my mind, when she walked in. I could not take my eyes off her. She had this aura of goodness, a kind of purity that was almost blinding. And somehow she noticed me too, the thug in the back who had no business even being there. It was my grandma who introduced us after Mass one day. She said Marisol could help me stay out of trouble, that she was a good influence. And you know what? She was. For the first time in years, I started thinking about my future. I got my GED, started going to church regularly, and even stayed out of the gang's way as much as I could. Marisol and I got closer, and eventually, we started dating. She made me believe I could change. I was ready to leave that life behind to build something real with her. She was my light, pulling me out of the darkness I had been drowning in for so long. Every day with her felt like a step toward redemption, a chance to become the man I knew, deep down, I could be. But even as I tried to walk away from the life I knew, the streets had a way of pulling me back in. Marisol saw the good in me even when I could not. She was the reason I pushed myself to be better, to prove that I was more than just a gang member. But the streets do not let go that easily. They cling to you, remind you of who you are, who you have been. And it was only a matter of time before the life I tried so hard to leave behind would come crashing back into my world, testing everything I thought I had become. I had been doing so well, staying out of trouble, keeping my head down, and focusing on the future I wanted with Marisol. But it is funny how life has a way of testing you when you least expect it. I was out one night just grabbing some groceries, nothing serious, when I ran into him. Luis. He was an old rival from the Latin Kings, someone I had a lot of bad blood with. The moment I saw him, all that rage I had buried, all that darkness I had tried to leave behind, it just boiled up. He looked at me with that same smug grin he always had, like he knew he could still get under my skin. And he did. We started talking, and you could feel the tension. It was like we were just waiting for something to set us off. He started throwing insults, bringing up the past, trying to drag me back into that life. And I wish I could say I walked away, that I was strong enough to turn the other cheek, but I wasn't. One thing led to another, and before I knew it, we were throwing punches right there in the middle of the street. It was ugly, brutal. All those years of trying to be better, to stay clean, felt like they meant nothing in that moment. I was that same angry kid again, fighting to prove something I didn't even believe in anymore. The cops showed up before either of us could do any real damage, but it was too late. They hauled us both off to jail. Sitting in that cell, all I could think about was Marisol, how I had let her down, how I had let myself down. I had promised her I would be different, that I would change, and there I was, back in the same mess I had been trying to escape. When Marisol came to see me, I could see the disappointment in her eyes. She didn't yell or get angry. She just looked hurt, like she couldn't believe I had thrown away everything we had worked for. My grandma was furious, and my cousin didn't even bother hiding his disgust. They all thought I was a lost cause, and at that moment, I started to believe they were right. But even with all that disappointment, Marisol still showed up almost every day. She would sit there on the other side of the glass talking to me, trying to keep that hope alive. I didn't deserve it, not after what I had done, but she kept coming. She was the only thing keeping me from completely falling apart in there. I spent those nights in jail replaying the fight over and over in my head, wishing I could go back, wishing I could just walk away like I knew I should have. But the damage was done, and all I could do was face the consequences. Little did I know that fight was just the beginning of a whole new set of challenges that would push me even further than I had ever been before. Getting out of jail felt like a second chance, but the weight of what I had done hung over me like a dark cloud. I was determined to make things right with Marisol, to prove that I could be the man she believed I could be. A month after I got out, I found out she was pregnant. The news hit me like a ton of bricks, but in the best way possible. Suddenly, it wasn't just about me anymore. I had a chance to build something real. A family. Marisol and I decided to leave New York to start fresh somewhere far from the gang life. Somewhere we could raise our child without all the shadows of our past hanging over us. We packed up and moved to a small town in New Jersey, where nobody knew our names. I enrolled in a vocational school to become a mechanic, something I knew I could be good at, and started working whatever jobs I could find to save up for the baby. Those were some of the toughest months of my life, but they were also the most hopeful. Marisol and I would sit up late at night talking about what our future would look like, what kind of parents we wanted to be. I was in deep, working long hours and studying late into the night, but every time I felt like giving up, I would think about that little life growing inside her, and it kept me going. I was determined to give our child the life I never had. When it was finally time for Luna to be born, things took a turn I never saw coming. The delivery was rough. Complications I didn't understand. All I remember is the panic, the doctors rushing in and out, and the look on Marisol's face as she was wheeled away. The hours felt like days, sitting in that sterile waiting room, praying like I never had before. I didn't care about anything else in that moment, just that Marisol and our baby would be okay. When the doctor finally came out, his face told me everything before he even said a word. Luna had made it, but Marisol, she had lost so much blood they had to do an emergency surgery, a hysterectomy, to save her life. The words barely registered. My whole world was spinning. She was in the ICU for weeks, and I was terrified I might lose her. While Marisol was in the hospital, I had to figure out how to be a father on my own. Luna was so small, so fragile. I had no idea what I was doing, but I learned fast. Changing diapers, feeding her, rocking her to sleep. All the while, my mind was split between taking care of Luna and worrying about whether Marisol would pull through. Those first few months were a blur of sleepless nights and constant fear, but in the middle of all that chaos, Luna became my anchor. Holding her, seeing her tiny fingers curl around mine, it gave me a sense of purpose I had never felt before. She was everything to me, and I was ready to do whatever it took to give her the life she deserved. When Marisol finally came home, she was a shadow of the woman she used to be. The surgery had taken a lot out of her physically and emotionally. She was in pain, tired, and the reality that she could never have more children weighed heavy on her. But we had Luna, and that kept us both going. Life wasn't easy, not by a long shot, but for a while it felt like we had made it through the worst. We had a home, I had steady work as a mechanic, and we had our beautiful daughter. I thought we were finally on the right track, building the life we had dreamed of. Little did I know, the hardest days were still ahead. For a few years, life settled into something that almost felt normal. We had our little routine, me working at the shop, Marisol at home with Luna, and the three of us spending weekends together. I was proud of what we were building. We had left the city, the gang life, all of it behind, and we were making something better for Luna. I thought I had finally outrun my past. But as Luna got older, things started to change between us. I had always imagined that being a father would be the one thing I could do right. But it seemed like the closer she got to being a teenager, the further she drifted from me. When she was little, she would run to me when I came home, her face lighting up when she saw me. But by the time she was 13, that light had faded. She barely looked at me, let alone talked to me. It was like I was some stranger living in the same house. I tried to be patient, telling myself it was just teenage stuff that every kid goes through, a phase of pushing their parents away. But it wasn't just that. There was something deeper, something that felt like real resentment. She started spending more time in her room, slamming the door whenever I tried to talk to her. In the few times we did speak, it always turned into an argument. The hurt I felt was like a knife to the gut. I had sacrificed so much to give her a good life, and it seemed like none of it mattered to her. Marisol tried to help, but even she was having a hard time getting through to Luna. She would tell me to give it time, to let Luna figure things out on her own, but I could see that it was tearing her up inside too. We had both worked so hard to keep our family together, and it was like it was slipping away right in front of us. One night after another blowout with Luna, I found myself sitting alone in the living room, staring at the photos on the wall. Pictures of happier times, Luna's first steps, her birthday parties, trips to the park. I couldn't reconcile the little girl in those photos with the angry, distant teenager she had become. I felt helpless, like I was failing as a father, and it brought back all those doubts I had tried to bury. Doubts about whether I was ever really good enough for any of this. As the months went by, things only got worse. Luna stopped coming home after school, staying out late without telling us where she was going. She started dressing differently, hanging out with kids who looked like trouble. The final straw came one night when I found her sneaking back into the house at 2 a.m, reeking of alcohol. I lost it. All the fear and frustration I had been bottling up just exploded. I yelled at her, demanding to know what the hell she thought she was doing, why she was treating us like this. But all she did was look at me with this cold, empty stare and say, "You're not my real father, so stop pretending like you care." Those words hit me like a freight train. I stood there, stunned, as she brushed past me and slammed her bedroom door. I felt like the ground had just been ripped out from under me. It was the first time she had ever said it out loud, the first time she had thrown it in my face. I knew something was broken between us, but I had no idea it was this deep. I spent that night sitting in the dark, replaying those words over and over in my head. "You're not my real father." I didn't know what to do with that. All those years, all the love and care I had poured into raising her, and that's how she saw me, a fraud, a stand-in for someone she had never even met. It was like everything I had built my life around was suddenly meaningless. The next morning, I confronted Marisol about it, demanding to know what Luna meant. She tried to play it off, saying it was just teenage rebellion, that Luna didn't mean it. But I wasn't buying it. I could see the guilt in her eyes, the way she couldn't quite look at me. That's when I knew that there was more to this story, something she hadn't told me. But it wasn't until later, when I found that broken tablet, that the full truth came crashing down on me, changing everything I thought I knew about my life and the people I loved. I had been planning Luna's 15th birthday party for weeks, trying to do something special, something that might remind us both of the bond we used to have. I had this idea to make a slideshow of her growing up. Happy memories, you know? Photos of her as a baby, her first steps, her first day of school, all the milestones that I thought mattered to us both. The tablet had been sitting in a drawer for months, busted screen and all, and I figured I could still pull the photos off it. I took it to a repair shop, got it fixed up, and when I got it back, I sat down to start looking through the pictures. That's when I saw the messages, a long thread of text between Luna and Marisol that tore my world apart in a matter of seconds. Luna's words were full of anger, hurt, and something worse, contempt. She wrote about how she knew I wasn't her real father, how she had known for years. But the real blow came when she mentioned who her biological father actually was. My cousin. The cousin I'd grown up with, the one I had trusted. The same cousin who had turned into a self-righteous pastor, preaching about sin while hiding a sin so dark it shattered everything I thought I knew. I couldn't believe what I was reading. I felt like I was in a nightmare, like any second I would wake up and none of this would be real. But it was real, painfully so. And then I saw Marisol's replies, her attempts to explain, to justify what she had done. She admitted it had happened only once, that it was a mistake that she regretted it every day since. But that did not matter. Nothing she said mattered. She had betrayed me in the worst possible way, and Luna had been carrying that secret, that burden, for who knows how long. I was numb, sitting there in front of that screen, rereading those messages over and over, hoping I had misunderstood, that there was some other explanation. But there wasn't. My entire life, the family I had fought so hard to protect and build, it was all based on a lie. I had raised another man's child, loved her like she was my own, sacrificed everything for her, and this was how it all ended. With a revelation so cold, so brutal, that it felt like the air had been sucked out of my lungs. The anger started building inside me, slow at first, but then it erupted like a volcano. All those years of struggle, of trying to be a better man, a better father, it felt like they had all been for nothing. I was angry at Marisol, at Luna, at my cousin, but mostly I was angry at myself for being so blind, so trusting, for not seeing the truth that had been right in front of me all along. I knew I had to do something, but I did not know what. I could not just pretend like I had not seen those messages. I could not go on living this lie. So, I made a decision that I knew would change everything, but one I felt I had no choice but to make. I would expose the truth, no matter the cost. The night of Luna's 15th birthday party, I was a man on a mission. I had spent hours preparing, making sure everything was perfect, but inside I was seething. I set up the slideshow as planned, but with a twist. I added the messages, every last one of them, to the end of the reel. I wanted everyone to see what I had seen, to know the truth that had been kept from me. When the moment came, I stood up in front of everyone, family, friends, people who had known us for years, and I played the slideshow. At first, it was just as I had intended, happy memories, smiles, laughter. But then the messages started flashing on the screen. I watched as the smiles faded, as confusion turned to shock, and then to horror. I could feel the room's energy shift, could hear the gasps, the murmurs. Luna's face went pale, and she looked at me with a mixture of fear and disbelief. Marisol broke down, sobbing uncontrollably, pleading with me to stop, to not do this in front of everyone. But I was beyond caring. I was done with lies, with secrets. I wanted the truth out in the open, no matter the consequences. When the slideshow ended, the room was dead silent. I stood there looking at everyone, and then I spoke. I told them about the betrayal, about the lies that had been hidden for so long. I told them I was done, that I was filing for divorce, that I was walking away from the life that had been nothing but a cruel joke. Then, without another word, I walked out, leaving behind the life I had once held so dear. That night, as I drove away, I felt a strange mix of emotions: rage, sadness, relief, but most of all, I felt empty, like a part of me had been ripped out, leaving behind a hollow shell. I did not know what the future held, but I knew one thing for certain: the life I had known was over, and there was no going back. The divorce was brutal, like tearing off a bandage that had been holding together everything I once believed in. We did not waste any time dragging it out.